And we can go.
Okay. Good afternoon. We'll get started for the Transportation Policy Committee meeting. We're here in the KIPTA Burke Room. It is approximately 12:30 on Thursday, August 25th. I am Carrie Butler, Vice Chair of the TPC, and will be coordinating this meeting on behalf of Judge Vogel. So with that, I will turn it to Andy.
Thank you very much. I will do roll call. Who do we have from Bullitt County today? How about City of Charlestown? How about J-Town?
Here, Matt Meunier.
Hi, Matt. It's Matt Meunier in the room, folks. Jeffersonville. New Albany. Jively.
Beverly's here.
Thanks for joining us, Mayor.
Thank you.
St. Matthews.
Bernie, here.
Join us, Bernie. Who do we have from Clark County? Brian's name on there. Brian, you there? Brian Dixon appears to be on the line. How about Floyd County? NDOT?
Tony McClellan.
Hi, Tony.
Hello.
Carly Metcalf.
Charlie. Jefferson League of Cities. How about KYTC? How about KYTC Central Office first? Pedro, thanks for joining us. And from District 5?
Matt Bullock, District 5.
Matt, thanks for joining us. Louisville Metro.
Dirk Golan.
And Dirk. Airport Authority. Oldham County, Judge Vogel couldn't be here today. Is there anybody else from Oldham County on the line? Anyone? How about from town of Clarksville? Thanks for joining us, Kevin. And from TARC?
Carrie Butler.
Okay. Yeah, Aida too. Thanks for joining us, Aida. How about any of our other federal partners from Federal Highways, FTA? I see Nora.
Hello, I'm Nora.
Join us. Anybody else that I missed that may have joined during the roll call? I see Jeffrey Hoban. Let's see, Mike King. Mike King's on and Tom Hall's on. So we've got a great crowd. Thank you all for joining us today. And Ms. Butler, we definitely have we have a quorum.
Excellent. With that, we'll move on to the second item on the agenda, the July 2022 TPC meeting minutes. Those were provided in the meeting packet, and unless there are any questions, edits, I'll make a motion to approve, or call for a motion to approve. A second? Okay, thank you. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
The meeting's minutes passed. Next is the public comment period, and to facilitate a review of comments, and I'll turn that over to Greg to review the public comments.
All right. We did not receive any public comments prior to the meeting. I don't see any in the Q&A. I know we're having some issues with the chat, so I've asked people to put anything in the Q&A, but I'm not seeing anything in for Q&A.
And if there are some that come through the chat, we could back at the end to review those. Okay, excellent. All right, next is the public involvement report, and again, to Greg.
All right. All right. This month's report, we'll get right into it. First things first, we'll get into the analytics for our social media and our website. Facebook saw a good rebound this month, over 3,500 impressions. Twitter was sitting at pretty solid numbers at 4,600. And the other good news is Instagram, our impressions nearly doubled from last month, so that's a good sign. One kind of reason I think for that is we have now started a link tree for Instagram. So prior, when we were putting posts out, it was a lot more difficult when we were linking stuff because people couldn't copy the links or couldn't add to them. So, Linktree is a free option. It holds the links. We're able to put it into our bio of our Instagram. It holds the links for 28 days, so we can just simply put, and that's what I do when we post something, just say, hey, visit the link in our bio. And I think the impressions show it's kind of gone up, so I think that's a good thing. You see the engagements have gone up more than double. Website analytics, again, pretty solid. From last month, no real differences. A little drop, but nothing major. We did get some social media comments. So the first one came in based off of the Grand Plaza grand opening that we were at. It says, since you brought it up, Dumanil could really use some traffic calming near this incredible public garden and plaza. It is a highway through a neighborhood. Another person commented about Dumanil and needing to work on that. Also a post that we did about Broadway All the Way. That came in, a question of whatever happened to the Gresham Smith plan for Eastern Parkway. It's a great set of recommendations, but it seems they've been forgotten. Public comments. So we did get a few public comments. Like I said, we attended the Parkland Grand Plaza. I got about several comments from there. One of them was concerns about no showing for TARC 3. I was able to give them the number, though, that you all provided in the past, so they can have that in case nobody does no show. They're able to call that number. Same as issues with TARC on time. I've talked to them about staffing issues and that, concerns that you all have been having. So another one was for advocating for more public transportation, buses, trams, etc. Another person is concerned about wanting a safety barrier at the curve at 6500 Upper Hunters Trace. That's down the south end of Louisville. Another person said that they cannot bike from their neighborhood in the Barber Mead area. And another person spoke about when it snows, trucks need to come onto the side streets. A lot of times when I meet with these people, I always explain to them that KIPTA doesn't do things like maintenance and those kind of things, but that's why I bring these comments here so that, the members of TPC that can maybe help with those kind of things can get these comments. As I said, we always put them on our website following the meetings. As I said, we went to the Parkland Plaza grand opening. We also went to our Middletown Chamber of Commerce work group and the Louisville Health Advisory Board Community of Care work group. Takes us to, last thing I'm just going to mention today is the federal certification review. So, as probably several of you all remember, we developed a survey ahead of our review in June. This was something new that our federal partners had asked us to complete for the so we ran that from the middle of May to the end of July. Not only does it just help us better identify how we engage with the public, but also be used as a teaching tool for the public to understand where and how and why they engage with the public when it comes to transportation planning. Our outreach was very similar to how we do most of our outreach: social media campaign, emails out to almost 1,900 registered users. TARC also shared the survey with their employees and their registered riders and on their social media channels, so we thank you for all that. That really helped. We highlighted the survey at the community events we were attending, displayed the survey on our website, shared it with our local libraries, local Chamber of Commerce newsletters, business association newsletters. In total, we received 130 surveys, so that was good. Number-wise, we did well. Most of these questions were just kind of a get to know transportation planning. First question was, do you know what an MPO is? 72% said yes. Second question is, do you know KIPTA is the designated MPO for this region? Number's a little lower, but still, again, 65% said yes, they knew KIPTA was the MPO. Question 3, do you know public meeting information can be found on KIPTA.org? 70% said yes. Question 4, how do you receive communication and information about the transportation process from KIPTA? This surprised us a little bit. As you can see, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, pretty much social media, as we expected, kind of covered that, where most people get their news. But the mailing list, that is something that I was kind of surprised about. Was not expecting to see those kind of numbers, but it was good. We saw a good number that shows people are getting from our MailChimp campaigns that we put out. Same for how they heard about the survey, very similar numbers, mostly social media, but also high on the mailing list. Question 7 was, I believe the MPO is making a concerted effort to having meaningful involvement of everyone in the transportation process, regardless of race, color, disability, or income. Again, 38 people strongly agreed, 22 people somewhat agreed, 37 really had no opinion. 19 and 14 either somewhat disagreed or strongly disagreed. So it's good to see that we were in the majority for people that agree we're making that effort. Question 8, are you aware of Title VI regulations to be found? This is the only one we didn't do really well on. 76 said no, 58%. But as I mentioned, this was kind of a learning process. So after each question, we had a link to where people could go to find this information. So if you didn't know that where the Title VI regulations are, you probably hopefully do now after you click the next question and it took you to that link and you visited that. So that's what we're hoping for. Question 9 was, I can participate adequately in the transportation process. Again, good numbers, 26% somewhat agree, 20% strongly agree, so that was good. We also had 2 long answer questions. One was involving Zoom and how people thought about that. Overwhelmingly, we got people who prefer it, they like doing it, they like it as an option, so we're obviously going to continue to do that. The other one was about just transportation. What would you like to see improve the area? What kind of transportation needs would you need? I'm obviously not going to go through the 130 answers we received on that one, but I'm going to put this, I've got this thing kind of in another format that I'll put on our website, so if the TPC wants to go through and review those answers, there were some really good ones in there, but I'm going to put those on there with, that'll be on our public participation page that we have all our other stuff on, including these reports. So I'll take any questions if anybody has any, but that pretty much wraps up my report.
Got a comment real quick, just to let everybody know, we should have our federal certification review report by this time next month. So we'll probably have that on next month's agenda. I've been told for Federal Highways they're putting the finishing touches on it. Sounds like this week is what it's. So we should expect that probably by next month.
All right. We do have some public comments coming in. Let's see, I've got 3 total. It says, good morning, I'm writing today to discuss the current state of the roads in majority black neighborhoods of Louisville and how Metro and state officials could better design the state highways and city roads that go through dense residential areas. In the Smoketown and Shelby Park neighborhood specifically, there are over 8 one-way streets with high-speed limits and little to no crosswalks. Many of the roads, specifically Oak Street, Breckenridge, Shelby, and Preston Street, become 2-way immediately past neighborhood boundaries. This has serious implications on transit design, ambulance/fire trucks being able to get to businesses and property in a direct way. Most blatantly, the state of highway of Oak Street becomes 2-way in the Highlands, 1-way in Shelby, 2-way in Louisville, 1-way in the Parklands, and 2-way in Chickasaw. As they are state highways, KYT has to be involved and help. Neighborhood representatives have gone to meetings like Preston Corridor Plan to ask public officials to reconnect our roads and neighborhoods using 2-way streets. High-speed traffic from suburban commuters make our roads unsafe, and tourists coming to our area have no idea, like Breckenridge, it's 2-way in one neighborhood and 1-way in another. This causes accidents. Fortunately, the 2022 current design for the Preston corridor not only keep the cutoff intersections at Burnett and Preston, have no funding for maintaining the 60-year-old pedestrian bridge, and keep the 1-way design of Preston and Jackson north of the railroad, River Road, and Preston Highway still designed as 2-way roads, even though it is the same highway. You see the investment on other state highways like Bardstown Road and wonder why in 2022 road designs in poorer neighborhoods are still being treated differently by both local and state officials. Preston and Bardstown are both 4-lane and have, it got cut off, sorry, and have multiple businesses and residential zoning along the corridor. Even the narrow residential streets parallel to Bardstown, like Cherokee Road, are 2-way. We ask KIPTA officials to start asking these questions to planning officials and help make our voices heard. Our children are at risk of playing in front of their homes and walking to school every day. This is not addressed. Thank you, and all the best, Jody. Those 3 were all from Jody, so.
Sounds like some of the information in the Complete Streets policy sort of speaks to some of the issues he raises, and I think we've heard some of those comments about biking, walking, other modes, and some of the other prior public comments. So I'm excited to hear that. But before we get to the Complete Streets policy, we have an update from Chris Sloan from the Kentucky Transportation Unit to discuss that. I move Kentucky. Okay, so assume you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you all.
I did a tour of the iMove
Yeah, you were
earlier,
on the bus.
so I'm excited to kind of hear more about it.
Chris, is there a clicker up there?
There is.
Okay, should be good to go here and.
Okay. All right, thank you all. I think it's been, a little over 2 years since I was here at KIPTA, probably presenting on the iMove. I think that time we were in procurement. A lot's happened in that years. We went through a pandemic. We're still sort of in the folds of repercussions from that. And we've been in construction for about 2 years now. So I want to kind of give everybody where we're at, an update of what's going on the project, and moving forward, what's going to be going on from here on out. Just so for those that may not be that familiar, I brought in a few slides from the previous presentation. Our original project objectives were to, improve safety and relieve congestion on I-265 and that busy freight corridor between I-64 and I-71, going down to Taylorsville Road, then all the way to I-71 up to the Crestwood exit 14. We wanted to try to provide a lower cost solution to build the priority projects. Both of those were in the SHIFT program at that time. Several of those were ranked very high. Some of them were ranked #1 in the state. So we combined pretty much 4 large projects into one extremely large project to make the iMove project. We wanted to try to leave congestion in those 3 heavily traveled corridors. That'd be I-265, I-64 through I-265 interchange, and I-71 once you start to get down toward the Snyder as well. We want to try to lessen construction impact for local and regional travelers instead of breaking those up into 4 projects and having 4 different construction companies trying to do MOT and different things all at the same time. Having those as one contractor or coordinating traffic control through the whole area made a lot more sense. Then we wanted to try to improve some of our existing roads and bridges that we had with the funds available. Not all of the bridges on the project are getting completely rebuilt. The bridges on I-71 are. Most of the bridges on I-265 are being widened, being that they're about 20 years newer than the I-71 bridges. That was the original project objectives. This is just sort of the area that's sort of laid out. In the south on I-265, we start at Kentucky 155 and head all the way north on I-265 on the Snyder until we hit I-71. At that point, we still continue north up to Kentucky 329, Crestwood exit. That encompasses a interchange at the I-64, I-265, and also has some intersection improvements at I-71 and I-265. So project schedule. Original scheduled completion date was 10/1 of 23. The project was awarded on 11/1 of 2019. We began construction in March of 2020. We were on the project for about 3 days before the mass pandemic shutdown started happening. We had crews come and go all year. We had multiple crews out at various times. We had the entire job shut down at various times. So we definitely had pandemic issues, and we continue to have issues. A lot of that has went into the supply chain issue that a lot of you all are currently aware of and may be dealing with. And I do have to say that the material and part availability at this time has become much more severe than the COVID shutdowns as it relates to construction. The amount of getting materials and our suppliers getting parts to produce those items that we need has become a much bigger issue. We've had one manufacturer we've been trying to get in some ends out of for some bridge decking, and their die is broke, and they don't know when it'll be fixed. They're waiting on a part to come in, and they're the only supplier in the U.S. that makes that exact pan. So it's, for those that say that, haven't heard it, the material and supply issues are huge, and have become a much bigger impact than a lot of the COVID issues with the shutdown. Right now, we have a current completion date of December 1st of 2023. Being that the supply issues have not begun to let up at this point, we still continue to get monthly updates that certain items are going to start having national shortages. Rebar, cement is the one right now that everyone's been going through. The rope for cable barrier, I just got a thing this week on. So I do say that 12/1 of 23 date may be hard to maintain. I mean, realistically, we're probably looking into spring of 24. So that's enough of the gloom and doom. So where are we as of right now? We opened the CD lane on I-71 on January 2nd of 2020. We had a milestone date at the end of that year, and we're able to miss it by 2 days. So after going through pandemic and shutdowns, being able to do that and hit it within 2 days is pretty good. Design on the project has been 98% completed at this point. We're still waiting on a few release or construction plans moving forward. One of those is the big intersection at I-64 and I-265. Most stuff has been completed. We're just waiting for a few red lines to come in on those set of plans. At this point, we've had 19 structures that have either been partially or fully completed. 9 culverts, 10 bridges in that. Several of those bridges are currently between phases. We've built the first part of the bridge. Most of the bridges on I-265, the first part has been completed. And we're trying to get the pavement enough along so we can sit traffic and start doing the second and third phases of those. I was looking at numbers yesterday. As of now, we've used about 290,000 pounds of steel rebar on the project. Over 22,000 cubic yards of concrete. Those that know, that's like I said, 2,200 truckloads. And then at this point, almost 220,000 tons of asphalt. So we have been moving a lot of stuff, even with everything that's been going on. The asphalt is actually really low at this point. We still have a lot to go on I-71. I-71 will be asphalt when we get done with it. So we're probably less than a third of the way done laying asphalt on 71. So that number will skyrocket probably into 600,000, 700,000 point by the time we're done. Current things that are going on in the project right now, what we call BU-22. This job is broken into buildable units since it's such a large project area with so much going on. And this is the I-265 widening over R.J. Corman. Got everything ready. We're waiting on R.J. Corman to set beams and some other stuff. And it's set waiting for about 2.5 months, waiting on R.J. Corman to have flagman and review time for beam setting. Like everyone else, R.J. Corman, KYTC, contractors, suppliers are all facing the same labor shortages. At this point, R.J. Corman has 1 transportation railroad flagger available for any project. So definitely try to make use of what time we can have that flagman, which at this point has been about 2 days a week. So we get to work out there almost 2 days a week at this point. Trying to hurry up and get it decked so that maybe we can go without the flagger for periods. This will help facilitate some of the wide to the middle, so we can start moving traffic to the middle once this bridge is I-265 median barrier wall. I don't know if you all have seen it. If you've been driving that way, we went with the single slope design as opposed to the Jersey barriers that KYTC used for years. When the FHWA came out with the new MASH standard, the Jersey barriers were not MASH approved or tested. KYTC had to go to the single slope design. This is the first installation of a single slope median barrier wall in the state of Kentucky. And this is actually what we refer to as a Tennessee 51. It was a design we stole from the Tennessee DOT 51-inch single slope wall. This is the first time it has been flipped in the state of Kentucky. It does have longitudinal rebars in it to help with the crash rating. It does meet the FHWA MASH standards for that. It took us 2 or 3 weeks to figure out how to flip it effectively. But now they roll pretty good. It's almost 0.9 cubic yards per foot as we move along. So when you have a 10 cubic yard concrete truck show up on site, you move about 10 feet in that paying for one truck. Takes a lot of trucks.
They're out there this week, right? Or,
Yeah, we've been at it every week. They've had some issues with the machine this week, 'cause we've been using it probably nonstop for the last 4 months, so they're having some on it with hydraulic parts and some of that. It's running today. So this will go, most of the barrier wall on I-71 is complete for the median barrier wall, and we're working on completing the rest of the barrier wall for I-265. Not the sexiest thing to watch, but it's, if you don't like moving real fast, it's really nice. These are 2 new bridges at Moser Farm Road. This is actually in Oldham County, at the end of Hounds Lane, where Hounds Lane meets Moser Farm Road. We're replacing 2 existing culverts with 2 new bridges. Partial demo will be occurring soon. We have all 4 abutments, phase 1 abutments in place. These are old wagon boxes that have sort of a T-beam under them. And to be able to support the road and the existing culverts, demo on these are going to be a little bit of a delicate issue. We're actually going to have to concrete saw and sort of split the beams in half and take out the top layer of the culvert that you can see there, while leaving the bottom beam portion of those T-beams, support the walls around the dirt and the old culvert without caving those in. I know the contractor has been talking with Oldham County on this about possibly closing Moser Farm Road for 4 or 5 days to allow this demo to happen more effectively. We're getting that worked out with Oldham County and Oldham County. As for other things on the project, lighting has started. The lighting at the interchange for I-264, I-265 has begun. 29 new high masts are going in that intersection. All the rest of the high masts, I know KYTC did a job the last 2 years to switch out most of lighting with LED lighting. The corridor for this project was not included in that. Said that we would pick that up as we came through. All the stuff around I-71, I-265 interchange has been converted over to LED lights. There's several new high masts up there as well. So I think, we'll be switching out almost 1,700 bulbs as we start to work our way south down to Gene Snyder at every intersection, Brownsboro, Westport, moving forward. So we've got a lot done. We still have a lot to go, hopefully in the next 1.5 to 2 years. As we move farther north, we are getting out of most of our construction bridges. So I think the roadway portions will go quite a bit faster than the bridge work. Than it does to lay pavement and grade. So with that, does anybody have any questions?
I did have one question.
Sure.
From the tour that we took, you, I think, had mentioned that there was a sort of strategic or intentional decision to not, at the intersection of 64 and 265, to go sort of down instead of building an overpass. I thought that was very
I think we are, and that's,
smart of KYTC.
well, a lot of that goes to, the planning partners, KYTC Planning and Parsons that worked on the original preliminary. Instead of building one of the huge stacks that you see in other places, bridge over bridge over bridge, we're actually going under the Snyder in several places, so that all of our structures will only be 1 level tall for maintenance. So that goes a lot back to, KYTC Planning and Design and partners at Parsons that come up with those.
So that is, sort of saves a little bit of money on the capital costs up front.
Saves a little bit of money on the capital cost, and saves quite a bit of money on maintenance later on, and maintenance of traffic when you have to work on them. Have a bigger crane to do anything.
would you say the design build aspect of this has worked? And is that going to be a trend for KYTC in the future? Too early to say? Or?
Yeah, I think it's worked well, and I think it is becoming a trend for KYTC. Not long ago, they let what they call the ORX project in Henderson as a design build model. KYTC is looking at different types of alternative delivery models. CMGC, this traditional design build, progressive design build, and some other ones. Erica Drury in central office is working hard as the, sort of coordinator for all those alternative delivery projects and the methods that go along with those. So I think you'll see more and more out of these for KYTC, especially as us and other people, you know, have the same shortages everyone else has for labor and workforce.
This would slow down no matter how it was procured, right? Yeah.
I guess it also sounds like we're moving from a northern Jersey barrier format to a southern Tennessee, a more hospitable,
I think-
Tennessee barrier.
I think Kentucky has chosen a final barrier to use as their new standard. We kind of got caught between. We didn't really know that the Jersey wasn't MASH approved until we had left the project. So we kind of had a couple options. There was an Ohio option, and there was a Tennessee option, and we went to the Tennessee option because it worked better with our drainage boxes to fit under it. It was about the same bottom width, so we were able to keep the same drainage boxes without the modifying. I think KYTC moving forward has went to more of a California system, which is a higher crash rating, a TL5. It also has a lot more steel in it, the split form. It's going to be more expensive and definitely more difficult to build in the field. I don't know if any of that has been actually put into place yet.
Anything else from anybody?
Thanks
Thank
for
you
coming.
very much, appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Next on the agenda is our complete street policy, and I believe Elizabeth Clark will present the complete street policy. And I know this has been, a lot of folks have been involved in this, the TTCC staff. I know it's something that we've been working on for a while.
Over 3 years?
3 years, so.
About 3 years, yeah.
Yeah, looking forward to hearing more about it and getting it passed.
Very much. I do have a presentation, so I'll wait for that to pull up. For those in the room, there was a complete streets policy draft on the table. And then Greg is also going to put the link in the chat for those of us online in case you want to view it. Alrighty, so today I'm here to present that final draft that the working group has put together for the complete streets policy. Before we dig into the policy, I want to back up a minute and just remind everyone what are complete streets. And the definition that you see on the screen is what is in the policy. It's taken from FHWA, and then that last line down there, a complete street is safe and feels safe for all users. It's kind of what it all boils down to. We're just worried about safety. Everyone can get where they're going, that our streets are designed for everybody. So why should we have a complete streets policy? First is to improve mobility and safety for all users, but most especially for those who are most vulnerable on the street. By that, I'm talking about pedestrians, cyclists, transit users who might start off as a pedestrian or cyclist, people who are using mobility devices, children, older adults, individuals with disabilities. All those groups are most vulnerable. Complete streets protect them the most, consider their needs, as well as the needs of motorists and freight drivers and emergency vehicles. It's everybody. Also, we have a safety problem. Our nation has a safety problem. And I dug through a local news outlet, and some of these headlines are just from the last 6 months or so. And this isn't new. You all have seen the numbers that Jeremy has presented, that Andy has presented in the past. So if there's anything that we can do to help improve the design of our streets, this complete streets policy might push us in that direction. Second, a complete streets policy would formalize and help us continuously improve how we design our streets. If you've looked at the policy, you'll see that this mostly applies for the NPO dedicated funded projects. And most of those projects that we already fund include those pedestrian and cyclist elements. They're already in there. So this would hold ourselves accountable to this standard. We would have a policy to formalize that. We would also be able to continually talk about how we can improve the design, the location of our walking and biking facilities. educate ourselves and our partners. And we can ensure that the consideration of all users is there from the beginning of a project, that we're always thinking about it. And then the last is that Complete Streets is a priority from FHWA, specifically in the bill. It is a planning emphasis area. There's specific funding identified and grants that have come out of the bill. And although it's not a requirement to have a Complete Streets policy, it is a requirement by NPOs to spend at least 2.5% of our planning dollars, planning funds, on Complete Streets activities. So this policy does support that. And during FCR, we did receive, I would categorize as strong encouragement to have a policy, although it's not required. A little bit about the development of this policy. As Carrie said, it has been a while. About 3 years, several staff members, some of who are no longer working here, and many NPO members. I think we've talked to every single local jurisdiction, state, TARC, consistently throughout those years. Just a little bit of a refresher, the working group was formed back in 2019 at the request of Louisville Metro, TPCC rep, and to look into having a policy for the NPO. What would that look like? Is it necessary? And that group reviewed several examples from similar NPOs. Those examples were used to help formulate the policy that you see in front of you. Kind of jump forward a little bit to 2020, we did have a break with the COVID-19 pandemic, some staff turnover, but most notably in summer 2021, some of you all talked to Nick Bale, and he interviewed the local jurisdictions to get your all take on the preference of the direction of the policy. How strict should it be? Should it be more of an encouragement policy? So that direction really also helped formulate this final draft. The working group has met, they met in January 2022, this year, and saw the draft pretty much in its entirety from what you all see today. There have been some edits made this month when staff proposed taking this to committee in early August. I'll go over some of those changes here at the end of the presentation. So that's a little bit about the development. I do want to step through the policy. This is the first time any of you all as TPC members are seeing it. So those first three sections are the definition, the background of the policy, what it supports in the rest of our planning activities, and the purpose. So those three items are what Complete Streets serves to do. Serve people of all ages and abilities, considers level of comfort and safety, and Complete Streets are the connected networks and context-sensitive approach. This is not a one-size-fits-all kind of description. It's really context-sensitive based on your location. Digging more into the meat of it, policy applies to all projects receiving KIPTA NPO dedicated federal funding. And that quote that you see is the quote from the policy that designs shall include accommodation of people using all modes of transportation and be sensitive to the context of the project setting. Again, not one size fits all, not a prescription on design. And we also have exemptions written into the policy that I will get to here in a few slides. Second part of that policy is to encourage all other projects, regardless of funding source, to include Complete Streets in their design. But that is an encouragement. This body has control over those NPO dedicated federal funds. So we really felt as staff that that was the only requirement that we could. Implementation. This policy is one piece of the funding award decision. You can see in that graphic on the presentation, We also have our project evaluation process for the MTP and working group input. That working group that's called together every single time we have a call for projects for these funds. They also provide their own input into those funding awards. So sponsors will be asked to acknowledge that their project adheres to the Complete Streets policy and explain how their project will safely and comfortably accommodate those vulnerable road users, specifically a description of pedestrian, bicycle, and/or, this is on the or, transit facilities that are included in the project. If the project does not provide any of these facilities, then the sponsor must explain why and request an exemption, provide a justification for why that exemption is necessary. Staff will submit this info to the working group, and the working group, again, considers those three pieces to recommend the funding awards. And this body considers that and approves any funding awards as well as those exemptions. So if a project receives an exemption and receives a funding award, that exemption is approved essentially through that process. And we imagine staff will periodically review these projects, not necessarily for compliance, because we understand that project design does change down the road, especially with the NEPA process. But staff will continually, through those quarterly review meetings, check in, make sure that the spirit of the policy is being carried through. On the screen, you will see the 7 exemptions that a sponsor can request, and they should provide a justification so the working group, TPCC, and TPC can consider that request. We had a lot of discussion on exemptions in the working group meeting, and although we couldn't imagine every single project that might need one exemption, we do believe that these 7 options give quite a comprehensive and flexible way for projects to still receive funding if they really, truly cannot include complete streets elements. Mostly we're talking about maintenance projects, so you'll see number 2, maintenance, repair, would be exempt, where the cost, I have that one circled, because we see that as a big factor. We don't want to prevent a project from occurring if it really needs to get done and it cannot include these facilities. So that is an exemption that the sponsor can weigh and decide if they need to apply for that exemption for their project. And getting toward the end, so the policy will be reviewed after this 2022 call for projects. The working group added that on Monday to the draft. And then at least every 4 years with the MPP cycles, it could be more often. It's really up to the committees and staff. And then there's also additional design and recommendations for sponsors to consider into the document. So I do want to go over the edits from the working group. So as mentioned in the memo, this is a little bit of a special case, but TPCC voted to allow the working group to meet one more time before TPC to make, to clarify some things, answer some additional questions, and make any edits as needed. Those are in red in the policy, and I can answer any questions on them if anybody has any questions. They were mostly to clarify the implementation process and to underline that TPC has that ultimate responsibility to approve the funding awards, exemptions, and any special requests. And again, that the policy will be reviewed very shortly in early 2023, and then finally to consider safety and maintenance agreements as necessary. So with that, I'll take any questions, and then action requested is for TPC to consider the approval of the complete streets policy.
Oh, I have a question to start. For For me, as somebody who's worked in the public transportation space, that is also very closely aligned to pedestrians and certainly people that use a mobility device, and lots of locations need to be accessed by somebody who might use a walker or a cane or wheelchair. You know, pedestrian infrastructure is sort of innate in what we do. So I was curious in some of the working groups, why would we not want to make things easier for people to walk or sort of stroll or use a baby stroller? Is there a reason why? I mean, I understand the cost, that makes sense, but I guess I'm obviously for this policy because it's work we do all the time, but I don't understand why we would want to make it harder for anybody to walk or move around.
It was my understanding that, the requirements, this would be placing a requirement on the use of those funds with exemptions.
Right.
And I understand, Andy, correct me if I'm wrong, that was, the main concern from those who did.
Yeah,
voice their
But
concerns.
I'm confident in saying that nobody was anti those
Okay,
improvements.
good,
No,
good,
it's not
good,
that.
good.
It's the requirement aspect.
Yeah, I guess that's sort of my question or maybe comment for consideration is just not addressing the safety part of pedestrians doesn't keep people from walking, because you see people walking all the time by overpasses, interchanges on arterial roads. So I think, I mean, I feel very strongly that this policy is very important, because not doing anything about it is almost worse than trying to figure out the way to make it happen and figure out the engineering, figure out the cost. So, okay, so it's not that people don't want to do it,
No,
it's just
I don't think that's true at all.
figuring out how to make it happen.
Correct.
Okay, great, all right. Any other questions from the audience, or maybe anybody on the Zoom screen?
This is Matt. I do have a question, comment. Can y'all hear me? All right. I guess I have a little concern about the timing of this being final draft and asking for TPC approval. I believe we just got this Tuesday afternoon, and because it's very, very, very important that TPC understands not only what's in there, but being able to frame the recommendations, I guess, for future funding opportunities. And because, like you said, it's meeting all of those requirements in order to get the funding, or asking for and getting an exception. So I think it's very, very important. I might make a recommendation that we table this to the next meeting to get a little more time to review. I can be convinced otherwise, I guess. But the other comment I guess I have is that either I forgot or I was not aware that you all were working on this. And the reason I say that is because KYTC has been working on the same thing in the parallel, apparently. I was on a working group for what we're calling the Complete Streets, Roads, and Highways Manual, and our final draft just got published last week. We're planning on making a presentation at the partnering conference here in a couple weeks. And I guess I noticed in Elizabeth, you've referenced our policy from 2002, and that's why we've done what we've done, is updating that 2002 antiquated policy. So I was / question, I guess, is, has there been any coordination between KYTC and KIPTA on this effort? Because I do think it's important to obviously be on the same page.
Yeah, so I've been sitting in on those specifically the Complete Streets Manual from KYTC. I was on that project team. Feel strongly that this policy and KYTC's anticipated new policy are in alignment, very much so. Keith Levin is aware that we are working on this policy, as is Tom Hall was the representative on the working group. So yes, I feel very strongly that the state and our policy would very much support each other. We would be able to make that change once the KYTC policy is in place to list that in the the guidance and resources, I believe that change could be made relatively simply once it's in place. And to speak to your, asking to table it, if I may, this policy has been with the working group for 8 months, probably. And although the conversation has been renewed more at the beginning of this month, the policy has been out there, and we have spent many hours talking. And the working group did feel strongly that they wanted TPC to consider this draft. I think we answered all concerns and really didn't leave anything lingering after Monday's meeting. So I just would ask the TPC to consider that as well.
If I might add
Did-
something else, that the ongoing call for projects plays into this too, and that ideally, at least from the KIPTA staff perspective, that this, is completed and approved, or not, but ideally approved in our minds at least, so that we can, have it to work with in this call for projects that's ongoing right now. Projects due, end of October.
And, I think Metro Louisville also has an existing complete streets policy.
They do, in an ordinance.
And an ordinance, okay, so we have, this feels like a good piece to sort of knit the KYTC soon-to-be-approved, policy, the Metro policy, as well as, I think you said FHWA has this FHWA has this as a priority.
Correct.
They have funds that are dedicated to help move complete streets along and some other specific funding categories. So this does feel like a good alignment of what I would say local, metro, and then state, federal, resource as well, and kind of putting it together in I guess we would consider this sort of a regional
Correct.
policy. Yes. And this was reviewed by the TTCC as well.
Yes, they saw the draft minus the red,
Okay.
because that was added on Monday. But for their vote, they asked the working group to get back together and then draft straight to TPC.
Correct, and I would say that, my interpretation of that vote and motion that was made that day, and those that were in the room, please correct me if I'm wrong, but this is earlier this month at the TTCC meeting, was to say, we want to forward this along to the TPC, but with another working group meeting or meetings. That meeting was Monday morning this week, and so the TPCC at least forwarded to the saying that working group please put a final draft in front of the TPC on Thursday the 25th.
So the sort of changes from the work group TTCC are listed in red in the policy.
Correct.
Just a sentence about the MPO can decide things on a case-by-case basis.
Mm-hmm.
The TTC working group will talk about context-sensitive design, and TPC still sort of has some control over the dedicated funding through the call for projects, as you mentioned. NEPA process is sort of,
If something were to happen, yes, that the projects could continue without those facilities if they came out of the NEPA process.
Okay. Mention about maintenance in section 7, adhere to safety standards with an addition in the recommendations page, and nothing in the appendix. Okay.
Many of them were in response to questions from District 5, and making sure that the policy would work for the region.
Right. Any other questions?
I'd like to make a comment. Matt, I think that this policy is going to apply predominantly when we have a call for projects. And so you'll have a working group. And when you have those calls for projects, there's also within this document an exemption process. And so with the call for projects, there's going to be a working group, and that same working group is the one that's going to decide to allow the exemptions that are in that document. So I don't think it's going to I don't see it as particularly burdensome on any processes that we have. It just kind of solidifies the fact that with STBG dollars, that these projects need to adhere to looking at all modes of transportation. And if they don't, then there's got to be some kind of a reason. And there's like I say, there's exemptions in there that says, okay, we won't be considering these because of X, Y, and Z. I don't think it is. I don't see it as in conflict with the state complete streets policy. I think it's terribly important that we do this, and that's, well, Metro has taken the lead with complete streets policies in the KIPTA region, and I know that our neighbors in Indiana are very much on board with this policy, and I'd like to see everyone support it.
If there are no other questions or comments, I believe the next step would be to, or somebody to make a motion to approve this policy, adopt and approve this policy.
I'm wondering whether, because Matt asked if we would table, should we have a vote on tabling it first?
I guess I would say, well, I mean,
Can I clarify?
Asked for more time. Is more time what? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think Matt wanted to say something.
I just want to clarify. No, I appreciate Dirk's comments, but I just want to clarify. I have no concerns about the policy itself. My only really concern was that maybe the short time frame that TPC members would have to review, since this is a very important issue going forward. I wasn't sure through the discussion whether the working group actually had any TPC members in it. If there were, then this is probably a moot point and I can shut up. But that's my only concern, is because this is a very important thing going forward for future funding and exemptions and the role that TPC has in making decisions. If we're in a hurry to get this ratified, so to speak, or we can wait, or if all TPC people think we're good to go, then I'm fine too. That's my main point.
No TPC members necessarily were on that working group. It was a TPCC working group, but those reps were representatives of some of the same agencies that sit on TPC, but just not direct TPC members.
There are several alternate
Yes.
TPC members that are TPCC reps,
Right,
right?
right.
They were there for certain.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if there's anybody who says, I mean, we could also take a few minutes and review the policy in more detail right now if we wanted to. If anybody would like that extra time.
I want to mention the add to the policy about after this first round of call for projects and/or the final draft from the cabinet.
Correct. So on that page, page 7, yes. So in red, you'll see the working group did ask that this policy be reviewed after this first round of call for projects in 2022. So that would be probably spring 2023 when that would wrap up and those funds would be awarded. So shortly thereafter, imagine the working group getting back together to see what worked and what didn't, propose any changes at that time.
Yeah.
It sounds like that within 6 to 7 months, there would be an opportunity for this body to review it in light of the call for projects as well as the soon to be adopted KYTC complete street plan. Okay.
And give it a chance to work and see how the first call would flush through this policy.
And just to reiterate something Elizabeth said earlier, is that all or virtually all of the projects in the pipeline right now in those dedicated funding streams would meet this policy or they would quite comfortably meet an exemption,
They're
okay?
highway,
Yes,
highway projects.
and there's not even that many highway projects, because keep in mind, it's dedicated funds, it's not,
Mhm.
it's gonna be the funds that are under the control of TPC, not under the control of KYTC and NDOT, for example, so,
So these for repair projects that are in the dedicated funds, those would be exempt.
So I just want to reiterate that with folks, because I think that's real important to consider. And so those projects were the ones that were developed in yesteryear. The ones that are coming forward, I think we would all probably agree that they're more likely to be that than they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whenever that project was first a great idea and came on the scene.
Well, then with that, I would, call for a motion for TPC to formally vote and adopt this complete streets policy.
Could you just give me a call back here, my number, 812-416-1190.
Is that a motion?
No, let's vote in a motion.
I make a motion that we adopt the complete streets policy.
We have a motion, do we have a second to adopt the policy? All right, so we have a motion and a second, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? All right, complete streets.
Thank you all very much for your
All
time.
right, thank you. And thank you to the work that the team and working group did for those that are on the working group, on this call. All right, excellent. So next up is Safe Street. So we're gonna be complete, and now we're gonna be safe. Excellent. So Alex, take it away.
Thank you. Are we in lightning round territory?
We're on lightning round, yeah, we'll try to wrap this thing up in 15 more minutes.
All right, well, we'll go fast here. I've stood at this podium a couple times over the summer talking about the Safe Streets and Roads for All, federal grant opportunity, and I'm coming before the TPC today with some good news. We have, I believe, 14 jurisdictions have signed on to be part of an application for an action planning grant for the Safe Streets and Roads for All. The application is due September 15th. We have representatives and jurisdictions from all 9 of the counties that KIPTA covers, various towns, cities, and county government. I believe Clark County is still considering, but that is the last jurisdiction that we are waiting to hear from. We sent around in draft narrative this week that we're getting comments back by the end of the week, and we are about good to go. Moving forward, the application deadline is on the 15th. Immediately after that, we will look to start the formation of a steering committee with co-applicants and partners, including Louisville Metro, who will be a partner, but a contributing partner, contributing $100,000 to the match. We want to form that steering committee even ahead of the expected January award announcements, because we want to be ready to go. If we are fortunate enough to get the grant, as soon as we get the word, we can get a bid out there, get a team on board to help us with this, and start the process so we can put ourselves in position for an implementation grant, which is the real goal of this process, to bring a lot more federal funding into the region to help with safety. So that's about as quick as I can go. I'm happy to answer any questions. We are asking for action today, just formal TPC approval for us to actually put this grant out in the name of the KIPTA NPO.
Any questions for Alex? Then I would say, do we have a motion to formally recommend that we move forward with this grant application?
Make a motion to move forward with this.
I
Do we have a
second, Dirk.
Great. We have a first and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Next is, the next item 8 on the agenda is being tabled. The freight network is tabled until the next month's meeting. So we have the congestion mitigation and air quality performance plan, talks about some of the performance measures, and Jeremiah Shaw will present that. Thank you.
Good afternoon. This is
same presentation that TTC, saw a couple of weeks ago. So I'll just, run through this, the lightning round. An overview of the CMAQ, and then we'll look at baselines and targets. This is, part of the PM3, so there's PM1, which is safety, PM2, which is like infrastructure, and this is, congestion mitigation. So this is now required because, KIPTA is an MPO serving, a transportation management area with a population greater than 1 million. So now we're required to submit a CMAQ performance plan. There's the 3 measures that we're going to look at. PHEAD, which is the person hours of excessive delay, and then we have the percent non-SOV or non-single occupancy vehicle travel, and on-road mobile source emissions, that's a reduction. Here's the timeline. So for this round, we're in the second performance period, and then in 2022, we'll look at, that's the mid-performance period, and then that goes up through 2026. So we're just at the start of it here in 2022. The first measure, PHEAD, we have a plot of previous years. You can see it looks like it's trending downward. Keep this in mind when we get to the baselines and targets slide. And you can see how we sort of made our selection at that time. So PHEAD looks at congestion on the roadways. Keep in mind that there's, we just heard the presentation about iMove, so we're looking at a lot of additional congestion due to ongoing construction projects. NDOT has also major construction projects on the interstate, so even though it looks like it's trending downward, we need to keep in mind that as these construction projects go on, that, you know, probably going to be experiencing some more delay. Percent non-SOV, these numbers are pulled from the ACS database. They include carpooling, transit, anything that's non-SOV. They also include telework, so percent of population working from home is included in this. And you can see it spiked in 2020, so we're going to look at, when we set these targets, we're going to sort of take that into account. And also there's, you know, a lot of uncertainty with telework and travel in general. Third is the on-road mobile source emissions reduction. We had to look at past projects and project into the future. So the thing about being able to set targets is knowing what's in the pipeline and being able to sort of total the actual emissions reductions from projects that we're seeing. We don't have any for reasons that are outside of our control. In Kentucky, we don't have control of the CMAQ projects that we can program. So there aren't any. What we did to set targets was look at historical data, and we'll see those plots in the next. Right now, this is the 2018 through 2021.
Important to keep in mind on this one, the only credit you get is for the emission reductions from your CMAQ project. So if we have the best emission reducing project that's not a CMAQ funded project, it doesn't count. It doesn't count. So keep that in mind on this one.
I'm sorry, one question. Is particulate matter not tracked anymore?
We are not a particulate matter non-attainment area. We are only simply a ozone non-attainment area. So therefore, NOx and VOC are some precursors that are tracked.
Yeah, that's required. There's a couple other ones required for other MPOs.
I think we'll have it in this upcoming call for projects in Indiana and the coincidental but call statewide in Kentucky. So those get reported up to the state, so those will be out there. But for our issues here, it'd be limited NOx and the VOC.
But it would still be good to reduce particulate matter.
Well, always.
Generally.
Always,
Okay.
yeah.
We'll get into targets and baselines. here's the same plot, except you can see the baseline and the targets also shown on there. After, discussing this with, NGOT and KYTC and the federal advisors, we settled on, targets and baselines to sort of, we didn't want to set targets too low, especially the, states were concerned about that, about not meeting the targets with the ongoing construction projects. So we settled on, targets for 10, for the 2 and 4 year targets, even though that it looks like it's a declining plot, but, we didn't want to set those too low.
Yeah, NDOT had particular concerns around like the Sherman-Minton Bridge project, and another project they've got going on in Floyd County, that'd be in this it'll be starting construction during this era too, so short-term pain perhaps on the P head.
Percent non-SOV, so the trend line is upward trending, and, we do have that spike, but we didn't want to set it too close, because, again, there's some uncertainty in the telecommute, so we set those a little lower, somewhere between the pre-pandemic and sort of looking into the future. That includes, carpooling, telecommute, transit, anything that's not occupancy travel.
On this one, we'd love to have a 2021 data point. That'd be telling, wouldn't it? Right, 2020, how much of a spike was 2020, in other words? It's obviously a spike, but is it an ongoing spike, or is it a quick peak? So unfortunately, the ACS data doesn't come out until late in the calendar year, so we won't have that until winter time.
Last one, on-road mobile source emissions reductions. Again, we had to look at historical data, to project 2 and 4 year targets. And, once we get to the mid-performance period, we can reevaluate and see how we're doing, and on all the performance measures, we can do that. This one especially, since we didn't have any future projects to go on in. Since we have a call for projects coming up, then that should help out with the future. Here's the summary of all the baselines and targets, and take any comments or questions that you may have, but action is requested for approval of the CMAQ performance plan and the associated measures.
Questions from anyone? Okay, hearing no questions or comments, I believe we'll ask for a motion to adopt the resolution, to adopt the congestion mitigation and air quality performance plan. So I have a motion.
Motion to adopt the CMAQ plan.
Do we have a second? Thank you. All right, we have a first and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Thank you so much. All right, next is a administrative modification 34. Thank you, Nick.
Okay, thank you, Carrie. This administrative modification was not ready to go last Thursday when we did the mail out. I have brought hard copies. Again, this is not an action item. These are changes, either new projects that are considered minor or minor changes to existing projects. And so Cedro and I, KYTC, have been working through this yesterday. So there are 5 projects included in this administrative modification. The first is a new bridge repair on I-65 near the Ohio River on the southbound lane. There's 3 kind of construction delays. One on the I-65 Kentucky 480 interchange improvements. There's ramp improvements and turning lanes. They're pushing construction back 1 fiscal year. Likewise, for I-265 bridge cleaning and painting of those bridge and steel bearings. And then third delay on the Kentucky 44 new turn lanes in front of Bullitt East High School. Those are all moving to 2023 construction phases. And then finally, there was another new bridge rehab project included in Bullitt County near Floyd's Fork off KY Kentucky 1526. I can take any questions or comments. There's no action required, and I'll send these on to our partners at NDOT and KYTC after to incorporate into their STIP.
Any questions or comments for this administrative modification? Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay.
All right, I believe, last, perhaps but not least, the Indiana MPO conference. Brad?
Yeah, just want to remind everyone that deadline to register is coming up, September the 9th. If people don't know, KIPTA is hosting the Indiana MPO conference. Talks about it every month, so I can't imagine you don't. But we are hosting over in Jeffersonville, October 4th through the 6th. And like I said, deadline's coming up. We are taking late registrations, but it'll be $200 after the 9th, and it's only $150 right now. So hope to see everybody out there. Yep.
Is there any other business, new or old?
I'll let Nick go first, and I've got something else as well.
Real quick, some grant opportunities, deadlines that are coming up. Alex already talked about the Safe Streets and Roads for All that's due on the 15th of September. On the 8th, which is coming up here shortly, is the Bridge Investment Program. This is a competitive program. Up to $10 billion is available for all sorts of bridge projects and the planning of those bridge projects. Reconnecting Communities pilot program is due October 13th. States, locals, MPOs, nonprofits are all eligible to apply. And then the Railroad Crossing Elimination Program from the Federal Railroad Administration is now open, closes on October 4th, and as the name implies, it's all about railroad improvements for safety. You're welcome.
On a very unrelated matter, we heard earlier about workforce issues, didn't we? And so I hate to have to do this, but I have to do a personnel report this month. And that personnel report is that we're having a staff member this is their last day here at KIPTA. And that person is Elizabeth Fark. So Elizabeth Fark will be going out into the consulting world starting next month. So personally, I will miss her very much. I know her colleagues will. I know the young colleagues have learned a lot from her. In their short time here, we've got lots of turnover. We've got one more turnover, but I just want to recognize her in front of the TPC, all of her hard work, Complete Streets, Freight Plan, MTP, all of it. I mean, I will sincerely miss her personally. I know everybody else will as well, and I think this committee will too. So we will miss you, and I just wanted to recognize you one last time.
Thank you.
That's right. That's all I have anyway. So.
All right, so with that, and best of luck to you, Elizabeth. She will see you here at some point. With that, call for a motion to adjourn, or adjourn by consensus.
I'll move.